of the blue. I'm dealing with things that are bigger than me and you. Well, I'm already running from you. Out of the blue, I'm dealing with things that are bigger than me and you. Yes.
All right, sorry about that, everyone. Welcome to the live show. Happy Father's Day, everyone. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay. The headphones went right shortly before we went live, so I need to get a new pair of studio headphones. But we titled the broadcast today, Happy Father's Day, good news, everyone. So this isn't new news. This isn't new information by any stretch of the imagination, but I think it's time to reflect and focus on all of the good news that has come out in regards to COVID. So let's start with some studies that have come out. Let's go ivermectin for prevention and treatment of COVID-19. Let's start there. Right, so this is American Journal of Therapeutics. We're going to go conclusions. This is on moderate certainty. Evidence finds that large reductions in COVID-19 deaths are possible using ivermectin. Using ivermectin early in the clinical course may reduce numbers progressing to severe disease. The apparent safety and low cost suggest that ivermectin is likely to have a significant impact on the SARS-CoV-2 pandemic globally. So again, not new information. This particularly came out when this one came out. Can't find it right now, apparently. This isn't new by any stretch of the imagination. This stuff has been out for quite a while. So moving on, what else do we have? Reconciling. This is a pretty big one. So infection fatality rates, and we're going to do a brief explanation there as to the difference between infection fatality rates and case fatality rates and why that's important. So a case fatality rate is a confirmed infection based on a PCR test or another form of testing like that. What infection fatality rate is based on is the seroprevalence data, which is the blood data, who has antibodies in their blood, and that is evidence of an infection. So if you produced antibodies, you're likely to have had an infection. So that would be how your infection fatality rate is derived. Now moving into the information. Okay, we have, I'm going to give a little background on the author here, just so we don't dismiss the information. This came out in January of 2021, was revised in February of 2021, and it was accepted 14th of March in 2021. Reconciling estimates of global spread and infection fatality rates of COVID-19, an overview of systematic evaluations by John P.A. Ionist. I can't pronounce that quite right, but moving on to his profile here. So he's a professor of medicine at Stanford, epidemiology and population health, and by courtesy of statistics and of biomedical data science. So he has published during his career over 1,290 publications, 1,266 journal articles, 27 featured publications, 23 conference proceedings. So very, very respected career coming from Stanford. He's a professor of medicine and epidemiology. And what did he say? This is his study. So coming back here, just go to the conclusions. All systematic evaluations of seroprevalence data converge that SARS-CoV-2 infection is widely spread globally. Acknowledging residual uncertainties, the available evidence suggests average global infection fatality rate of 0.15%. And 1.5 to 2 billion infections by February 2021, with substantial differences in infection fatality rate and in infection spread across continents, countries, and locations. So based on where you are, it might be higher, but overall, averaged out to 0.15% infection fatality rate. What he did was he took seroprevalence studies and systematically went through all the studies that are seroprevalence studies. So the results, he had 6 systematic evaluations were eligible. Each combined data from 10 to 338 different studies, 9 to 50 countries. Because of 2 different eligibility criteria, 2 evaluations had some overt flaws, violations of stated eligibility. Anyways, he's explaining how he got there. Global representativeness was low, with 78 to 100% of the evidence coming from Europe or the Americas. So it's not from all around the world, and that's problematic, obviously. But 78 to 100% coming from Europe and the Americas, and 0.15% infection fatality rate was the average, 1.5 to 2 billion infections. So, putting that in perspective, that's kind of some good news. Unfortunately, we're not seeing these things advocated here in Canada quite yet, but there's starting to be pushback on that. We're going to touch into the Derek Sloan press conference here in just a minute. Derek Sloan brought on a few respected doctors and researchers in a press conference. Dr. Byron Brittle, Dr. Patrick Phillips, and there's one that escapes my mind, but we'll go into that. And he had them speak on some of the censorship that's been occurring in some of the studies that are out there. There's a lot of things that are being pushed down and dismissed, and rightfully so, because for them to get out would have to forcibly shift the narrative. So we're going to go on here. Vitamin D. This is more good news. So we had ivermectin. And then we had the seroprevalence data, infection fatality rate 0.15%, billions of infections. This sounds like a bad thing, but it's a good thing. So if you have antibodies and you never knew you were infected, that's a good thing. That is as low as 0.15% globally, mostly Europe and the Americas. That's what is taken. We have ivermectin showing that it does, lots of research showing that it reduces mortality, hospitalizations, and death. And now we're going to move into vitamin D, which our health minister here called a conspiracy theory, but we'll go into the medical journals. National Library of Medicine. Vitamin D and cincolate are associated with increased survival in perinatal diastasis, but not with residual. This is not the right one, is it? Yeah, so that's not the right research. That is not the one, but we have it in here anyways. So moving on to our article on the press conference, I guess. MP Derek Sloan concerned about censorship of doctors and scientists. We'll move to Dr. Patrick Phillips here, who had the vitamin D study. Dr. Patrick Phillips is a family physician in Englehart, Ontario, who primarily works in the emergency department of Blanche River Health. In speaking about the various treatments that are available outside of a COVID vaccine for COVID, Dr. Phillips spoke about vitamin D, something our health minister has deemed fake news. Dr. Phillips noted that there are, quote, over 85 studies and 27 treatment trials. Many of these are peer-reviewed, end quote. Dr. Phillips added that the scientific literature has shown a 56% reduction in mortality in patients who take take vitamin D compared to those who don't for COVID-19. We'll pull up that study. This is the one. I have the wrong study associated in here. No, that's problematic. I gotta correct that. But 56, it was pulled directly as a quote. That's why I have the wrong study in there. So he said 56% reduction vitamin D. Moving on to ivermectin, he said at this point, direct quote here, we have 97 studies and over 30 randomized control trials that have shown a huge benefit to this medication in reducing the risk of death and hospitalizations in patients who have COVID. And not only does this treat patients with COVID, especially when you give it early, but there is a role, and there is 14 randomized control trials that show a role for prophylaxis. Meaning taking this medication for high-risk patients early, it can reduce your risk of catching COVID in the first place, which is especially relevant in long-term care homes and for healthcare workers in hospitals. So if you haven't checked out this here, CPAC, MP Derek Sloan raises concerns about censorship of doctors and scientists. Check it out. It's going viral right now. So it's been up for less than, I guess, wow, like probably 2 days now, and it's over 400,000 views. And the reason being, for a lot of people, this is new information. Quite frankly, we had doctors coming out and laying out concerns they had about censorship and various things. I'll continue. Dr. Byram Brittle, and we covered his article. He had a radio interview where he talked about concerns about COVID vaccine potentially causing infertility because it's circulating the blood, and going into the details of that. That was with Alex Pearson. Continuing back here, so he's an associate professor of viral immunology at the University of Guelph, and what kind of blew up him into the prominence of people knowing who he was is he did a brief 5-minute interview on the radio a few weeks ago where he spoke about a potential link between the COVID vaccine and heart inflammation, something that he believes may hold a connection. And so Dr. Brittle said after the interview, it was like a nuclear bomb went off in his world. He told reporters that within 24 hours, there was a libelous website that was put up using his domain name. Dr. Brittle added that a fake Twitter account was developed to slander him and that he has been undergoing daily attacks for speaking out about his concerns. And so just to repeat that, he's an associate professor of viral immunology at the University of Guelph, and he's being harassed because of his views. Continuing here, he said that although his institution has stood for academic freedom, kudos to them, and that they respect the basic tenet of academic freedom and freedom of speech, some of his work colleagues have been harassing him for the views he has expressed publicly, presumably about the COVID vaccine. Quote, "I'm experiencing harassment, lots of harassment in the workplace," Dr. Brittle told reporters. And perhaps most shocking is the harassment that Dr. Brittle claims to have received from a member of the Ontario Science Table that is supposed to inform the Premier on COVID-related decisions. Now, Dr. Brittle didn't mention names, but I'm pretty sure that he was referring to David Fistman, the same Ontario Science Table member who has been paid honorariums by Pfizer and AstraZeneca, as indicated on his declaration of interest on the Ontario Science Table website and linked in the article. Now, he put out a tweet that said the website debunking Dr. Brittle's COVID-19 vaccine claims has been updated with lots of peer-reviewed science that attests to the safety of vaccines. And then he linked the website. And for those who think I made or organized this website, nope, but grateful to the scientist who did. And then he commented that a friend indicated that because of Dr. Brittle's interview, it caused their parents to cancel their vaccine appointments. So again, just another example of like the censorship that is going. Vitamin D is fake news. Hey, Patrick. It's just another example of the censorship that's going on. Like, again, I keep saying to my wife, we have these conversations, but how many times can you dismiss somebody with a lengthy record in their field as a quack or as out to lunch or crazy? So again, we double back here. Dr. Byram Brittle, feels like he's being harassed in the workplace. We have an actual member of the Ontario Science Table, the people that are supposed to be representing our viewpoint on COVID and giving a balanced approach and response and representing the scientific community and giving the Premier that advice, is openly mocking concerns from an associate professor of viral immunology who works at the University of Guelph. But there's no conflict, everyone. It's okay. He has no reason to mock this guy that might cast doubt on vaccines, who, the fact that he received honorariums by Pfizer and AstraZeneca doesn't even come into the picture. Don't you worry about it. He just criticized Dr. Byram Brittle out of the good of his heart because he thought he was an idiot. I'm sure the money had nothing to do with it. This is the stuff that's going on behind the scenes, and it just drives me nuts. But I'll continue here with this. Let me pull this up for everyone. This is included in the article. You can check it out. Share this article out. But this is actually from Fistman's declaration of interest. Like I'm always careful to include that. I don't make a lot of claims without backing them up openly and transparently because I understand the era we live in. But here we go. Pfizer vaccines. AstraZeneca vaccines. Linked here, you can check it out. Attended an advisory board meeting on future projections for the pandemic, was paid an honorarium. Yep, paid to him, related to COVID. AstraZeneca attended an advisory board meeting, was paid an honorarium, consulting. Yes, paid to him, COVID related. So this guy's criticizing the guy who has concerns, has the record to have concerns, for the record. And I'm not saying that Dr. Byron Brittle's right. And I want to, a lot of the things we cover, I acknowledge that there's a lot of, they don't get covered by the mainstream media. I do my due diligence to try to cover these things because I understand they're not being covered. But I'm not saying he's completely right. But he's brought up concerns. He brought up the biodistribution study from Japan that shows at least these nanolipid particles, the travel package that the spike protein travels in is ending up in the ovaries and in bone marrow. And so now there's some concerns of short-term and long-term effects. And this is coming out from people that have the credentials to make these criticisms. And now it doesn't mean that it's the sky is falling and it's terrible and it's going to be this catastrophic thing, but it's something to pause and go, that needs to be examined. And that's basically what my understanding of a lot of these experts have been coming forward against the narrative kind of are saying. Really, it's just, let's be cautious. Let's do the right studies. Let's ask the right questions when necessary. And there's some questions cropping up, and that have been cropped up. If you look at the Pfizer FDA application, some of the things in there we posted on. I'm not going to talk about it because I don't want to get this video taken down. But you can check out the Facebook page. We've posted on that before, and you can find it. But anyways, these people are speaking up. They're being censored, and you have people that are supposed to be representing the scientific community openly mocking them, who are taking honorariums, at least in the case of David Fistman, from Pfizer and AstraZeneca. And that guy's the guy criticizing. And then I've touched on it before. We wrote on this. 19 of the 27 members on the Ontario Science or COVID Science Advisory Table are from the University of Toronto or the Dalla Lana School of Health, which is run by the University of Toronto or owned by. That's not really a balanced response, if you ask me. And then from the research I've been doing, University of Toronto received some sizable funding COVID-related. You can look that up on grants and contributions, Open Government Canada. You'll be able to find it there. And it's just kind of crazy. So let's get back to this. That was Dr. Byron Brittle. We had Dr. Patrick Phillips talking about ivermectin and vitamin D at this press conference. And then one of the things, Don Welsh, is he spoke as well. He's a professor at the University of Western Ontario. He spoke about debate and science. And I thought this was really well said. Quote, "Science has not been functioning properly for the last 15 months as we address COVID-19. Our public health community has claimed to know the science and to provide unassailable solutions. Those solutions, in the forms of NPRs, lockdowns, masks, track and trace, and social distance, perhaps well-intentioned, have largely failed. And they have created a remarkable list of hardships for Canadians that will take this country many years to recover from," end quote. Now, in speaking about the censorship that Dr. Bridle and others have received while attempting to further the scientific debate around COVID, something that science is supposed to be, right? Open and transparent, and debate leads to the truth. Science is the deduction of falsehoods. Dr. Welsh told reporters while being visibly stirred emotionally that, quote, "This behavior is unacceptable in Canada." He took a pause, said it is antithetical to an open and enlightened society. He finished his thoughts by saying, "It is time for all in Canada to engage in critical thinking, to question all aspects of public health response to COVID-19. We need deep engagement. We need thoughtful debate to turn this public health response around." So that's Dr. Don Welsh. Again, and these aren't the only people that have spoken out. There's been so many. I mean, you could go on our page and type in "doctors speak out" or like Dr. Jay Bhattacharya. There's another one. Sunetra Gupta, Dr. Kulvinder Kaur. How many doctors? And another thing I want to add here that was really interesting, Dr. Brittle talked about this. He said he represents hundreds of other doctors. This is one guy. He said he represents hundreds of other doctors who are too afraid to speak publicly. We had our physicians college here come out and make it, and it was talked about in this press conference, and I highly recommend you check out that press conference. They came out and said, this is happening, we're being censored, and yet they received one question, and it's kind of been swept under the rug, and it's insane to me. We've had so many, I was saying, people come forward, Dr. Sunetra Gupta, Dr. Kulvinder Kaur, many people have come forward talking about this. We had the Lancet in August of 2020 saying that full lockdowns don't work, and yet for some reason in Canada, we're doubling down on these falsehoods. The Indian variant, less lethal than the original. As expected, viruses typically get less lethal. And I'm going to add this here. This is a recent article, and I think everybody will like this. This is the National Post, June 19th, 2021. Canada's COVID-19 lockdowns have lost all touch with reality. Could we be turning the corner, everyone? Could we? Are we finally turning the corner when the mainstream media is finally, potentially, maybe starting to see that there isn't a game plan here? The game plan is just to keep locking down. That's not a game plan. And as the criticism has been from many people for a long time, but goodness, finally, we're getting there. Maybe. COVID-19 is now killing fewer Canadians per day than the daily average from pneumonia and the flu. The National Post 1 day ago, everyone. Good news, everyone. That was supposed to be from Futurama, in case anybody missed that reference. The professor. Good news, everyone. So, we're going to jump down here. The government of Canada did not care, and that's not where we want. Florida, getting closer. On Thursday, only 12 people in Canada died from COVID-19. For context, in a typical year, 19 Canadians can be expected to die every year from flu or pneumonia. In the same average day, 17 will die from Alzheimer's, 38 will be killed in accidents, and 11 will die by suicide. In much of the country, the risks from COVID-19 have now been definitively outstripped by Canada's other public health emergency, the opioid crisis. 2 Albertans died of COVID-19 on Thursday, and by contrast, in just the first 2 months of 2021, Alberta saw an average of 4 fatal overdoses per day. Are we getting the picture yet? Man, even the mainstream media seems like they might be waking up. Canada now has one of the lowest rates of per capita COVID-19 fatalities in the entire G20. At the end of this week, the average citizen of the European Union is now 61% more likely to die of COVID-19 than the average Canadian, even though the case rates in both places are roughly the same. And while the rise of Delta variant has spurred worry, it is proving to be just as resilient to vaccination as any other strain of COVID-19. On every front, Canada's pandemic is speeding toward its end. A fast-tracked, innovative national vaccine strategy has brought Canadians deliverance from COVID-19 faster than almost anyone thought possible. The country now has the world's second highest rate of first dose vaccine coverage and second highest rate in the world of first dose vaccine coverage, everyone. And 4.8 million people are now fully vaccinated, including half of all Canadians over the age of 80. So half of all Canadians over the age of 80 are fully vaccinated. We're still doing this. Country's reward for this epidemiological miracle? A continued lockdown on commerce and civic life that in many ways is indistinguishable from the summer of 2020. When a vaccine still seemed like a distant pipe dream, and more than 2/3 of the country's 26,000 COVID fatalities had yet to die. And I'm just going to say that whole figure of 26,000, when we consider that the PCR test, the chief microbiologist of Manitoba, under oath in court, said that in the lab, only 56% were actually infectious. If we take that number and we extrapolate it to the deaths, that means only half actually died with an infection of COVID. So take your number, cut it. Anyways, so we're the second highest vaccinated country in the world. We have half of our population over 80 that's eligible vaccinated with their second dose. Florida has a lower case fatality rate. I covered this in a previous article. Let's see if we can pull it up. Diverge Media, Florida, Texas, Ontario, and Nevada. Let's pull up that comparison because it's still relevant. COVID-19 by the numbers. You can check out this article. COVID-19 by the numbers, Ontario versus Florida, Texas, and Nevada. So I wrote this, when did I write this one? June 11th. So 9 days ago. It's not too long ago. And here was the key takeaway here. Case fatality rate comparisons between the countries, or between the states and Ontario. Case fatality rates, lowest to highest. Florida, currently open, currently having, here, let's pull this up for everyone. Currently open, currently indoor stadiums being held, no mask mandate. I think lower percentage of first dose vaccination for sure. Second dose is higher currently, but they opened up way before we did. They've been open for quite a while. I mean, what needs to be said? 1.61. Ontario, case fatality rate 1.66%. Nevada 1.71. Texas 2%. Vaccine comparison of population vaccinated with the first dose. Florida is at 55% compared to our eligible population of 71.863. Texas at 54.64, Nevada at 46.74, 7-day average. Ontario 568, Florida 5,711 cases, moving average. Texas 7,936, Nevada 403. Nevada has a population of 5 million, so much more per capita than we do, and they're open as well. And then I threw in the hospital surge capacity when I wrote the article. For reference, what you're seeing in red is equal to or greater than 90% of surge capacity. Yellow, 70 to 90. Orange, I believe, is, I'm not sure what orange is, 80 to 90. And green is under 50. But that's your picture of Ontario 9 days ago. Surge capacity by the hour even, less than 50, 85 hospitals, 50 to 70, 44, orange, 70 to 90, 22, and then equal to or greater than 96. So that's kind of the case there. And we're watching the United States completely open up. And we see, I mean, you look at the case fatality rates, see, that's not even an argument there. We have higher first dose vaccination rate. So this whole narrative has been falling apart. And that's why you're seeing the mainstream media now, I think, starting to kind of question this. It's like a lot of people bought into, okay, we'll get the doses up. But I mean, we have the second highest first dose vaccination rate in the world. The next closest is Senegal. It's a small island nation. Like, that's insane. And then we can't open, and Texas and Florida, and they're open, and they're indoors doing no mask, doing stadiums and events. It's that whole narrative's falling apart, and now you get the people that bought into that are starting to question things. We're 16 months into this. There's no indication that there's a plan to get out of it. They said the plan was the vaccinations, and they seem to keep changing things. So if the plan is that, then why did the goalposts keep changing? It was 60%, now it's 70%, now there's talk about that changing again. It just doesn't end, and it doesn't end because we keep letting it not end. It's not going to happen in the States. You think that could still fly in a Republican state like Florida? I don't think so. And hopefully we're seeing the wind shift here, and some criticism start to come from sources like the legacy medias that people seem to trust. But don't get the hopes up too much, I guess. It's insane to me when I looked at this case fatality rate comparison and did this article. You have UFC events, you have baseball, indoor stadiums, and we have higher numbers. Like, it's of first dose vaccinations. I'm going to play this. I don't know, maybe I shouldn't. But you can see the picture here. I'll pull it up. This is from a Texas Rangers game just recently. Like, it's two different worlds. And you would think in the day and age when we have internet, when people can see what's going on, you think we would be past that point and people would be going, okay, why? But I still feel people are justifying the positions that our government and our officials are taking. they're doing the best they can and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, at what point in time, like, you can't keep giving people grace forever. They're supposed to be leaders. I mean, you get 2-3 months max in my mind to kind of get some firmer footing. Maybe 6 months, you could say, like, more data was coming out and they would change positions. We're not seeing any indication of that. And you have to ask why. Is it because the Canadian people are okay with this? I mean, we're seeing stories come out now about underground barbershops, underground salons. I was gonna post a picture today. Let's see if my phone's still live. I can read off these comments because I didn't end up posting it. I didn't want to oust people on their names on social media. I understand they posted it publicly, but not maybe the way they intentioned. So I didn't want to put it on the page. Let's pull this up. All photos. Okay. I'll read out some of these comments if I can find them. What the heck? For you? What do you mean for me? No, I can't find it. Anyways, we had salon owners. It was like a CTV post. It was about a salon owner, a barbershop. I think it was Ottawa that got fined $888 for basically running underground. And the comments have changed. The comments have changed. It's just comment after comment after comment of salon owners and fed up citizens. And one of the comments that stood out to me was the person actually said that they wish they had broken the rules earlier, if they had realized it was going to go on like this. So you got to keep this in mind, is a lot of these people that have bought into the original government narrative, they've given up. Like, they don't even believe in this government's ability to turn things around, even if they believe it's terrible. And there's a lot of people are turning. It's time to open up and learn to deal with this. And thank goodness, let's hope we head that way. But I really can't wrap my head around this. I don't know about everyone else. Well, leave your comments here. What's been like the craziest thing to wrap your head around in all this? Like, the thing that seems like it's been a pretty obvious thing that you can't get people to wrap their head around, even if you present them with facts. I'll go first. For me, there's a couple of things. With the PCR test, people understand that it's a flawed test, but they don't understand and extrapolate that to how much that implicates things. So, for instance, if 56% of your tests are false positives in the sense that they're not infectious when they go to the lab, which is what it was indicated by a chief microbiologist in Manitoba under oath in court, then you could extrapolate that data and go, okay, well, then deaths, half. They were comorbidities. We know that a lot of people have comorbidities. And so that if it's not the inactive infection, that's not the thing that took them. Even if you wanted to attribute it there, you can't. So that's the thing. People, they completely misunderstand the importance of that. So take half your cases, cut them. Take half your deaths, cut them. And then the infection fatality rate I would add in there. So how many people have actually been infected, didn't even know it, have antibodies, and it's not the risk that was originally sold to the public. Let's go, Glenn, from 2 weeks to flatten the curve to 16 months later. That's right. All right. And this is a recent one here. We'll add it in because it's Father's Day. And then we'll wrap up here. The Great Reset Opinion, World Economic Forum Influence in Canada. Covered this recently. Just 3 days ago, released this article. If you haven't checked it out already. So many will be quick to dismiss the World Economic Forum. Klaus Schwab was the author of the Great Reset, president of the World Economic Forum. They'll say things like, what influence do they have here in Canada? And on that note, here's the list of current members tied to the World Economic Forum in some way in Canada, just to give you an idea of the depth of the influence. Chrystia Freeland, Deputy Prime Minister of Canada. You actually clicked this profile. Let's pull this one up. Yes. Journalist and author, began her career as a Ukraine-based stinger, blah, 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 blah. Let's skip down to the bottom here because this is what I want. Sale of the Sand, no, don't want it. Member of the Board of Trustees of the World Economic Forum, everyone. Okay, let that sink in. Deputy Prime Minister of Canada. Deputy Prime Minister of Canada, member of the Board of Trustees of the World Economic Forum, who's calling for the Great Reset and a radical change to capitalism and the Fourth Industrial Revolution. Nothing to see here. Okay. Others of note include Mark Carney, Pierre Poilievre, Mark Carney. Recent ones you may recognize the name. Jagmeet Singh. He's a member of the Young Global Leaders, which is a partner program of the World Economic Forum. Michelle Rempel, she's a member of the Young Global Leaders. Melanie Joly, Minister of Economic Development and Official Languages, named a Young Global Leader by the World Economic Forum. Now, I'm going to point this out for everyone. Michelle Rempel took down her Young Global Leaders profile on the Young Global Leaders website and on the World Economic Forum. But, it's like Michelle Rempel about, this is her MP page, mprempel.ca. Where'd it go? There it is. So she's a rising star, calling her one of the government's most impressive performers. Michelle is also a young global leader, invited to be so by the World Economic Forum. The World Economic Forum calls the Forum of Young Global Leaders a unique and diverse community of the world's most outstanding next generation leaders. Yeah, so just touching on that barely. But again, back to the influence here. Continuing on, Eilish Campbell, Chief Trade Commissioner of ADM, Global Affairs Canada, and those are just a few. So this is Klaus Schwab, creator of the World Economic Forum, speaking about it, the pandemic. He said, quote, "The pandemic represents a rare but narrow window of opportunity to reflect, reimagine, and reset our world to create a healthier, more equitable, and more prosperous future." All right. Deputy Prime Minister of Canada sits on the Board of Trustees of his organization. Just keep that in mind. This is their list of partners the World Economic Forum partners with. Strategic partner, again, Deputy Prime Minister of Canada is on the Board of Trustees. Okay, here's their partners. Alibaba Group, China. AstraZeneca. Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. BlackRock, Cisco, Citi, Deloitte, Facebook, Google, Huawei, IBM, Microsoft, MasterCard, Novartis, Open Societies Foundation, Ontario Teachers Pensions Plan, Pfizer, Moderna, Unilever, the Coca-Cola Company, Visa, just a few. Just a few. And so you kind of get into that. You can check that article out more. But here she is. Here's the picture. Board of Trustees. And for the people who maybe don't believe me, although it's all linked. Leadership and governance. You can see we're on the World Economic Forum website. Oh, look, Mark Carney too. Chrystia Freeland. So it bothers me. Oh, wait, no, I didn't show that to anyone, did I? Oh, here it is. World Economic Forum website, leadership and governance board, Chrystia Freeland. Click it, go to her profile. So, I mean, I've covered a lot of interesting stuff recently. Stuff like that for me, it's like if you can't realize the depth of influence that isn't representative maybe of Canadians, what Canadians want, that's problematic. Deputy Prime Minister of Canada is on the Board of Trustees to uphold the values of the World Economic Forum. They're partnered with all these people. I'm not going to tell you what to think. Again, it's insane to me. And then doctors being told they can't speak out, they'll be censored, threatened with their jobs. Like, this is the state of Canada right now. It's time for good people to speak out. There's not enough people speaking out, and if you haven't been in your families, it's time. Like, there was a time to be polite and kind of, I mean, at this point, 16 months this has gone on. It's had every chance. I mean, our vaccines are way up. I don't understand how we're still at a point where people are justifying this, and I think it's time to be honest about that with people, I don't think this is justifiable anymore, even if you didn't initially believe that. I think we're long gone of that being the case now. And it's time to be vocal. Like, here's another one. Released this recently as well. No debate required. Quarantine Act changed in 2019 to allow for no debate before its use. So this was written 6 days ago. Quarantine Act in Canada allows the government to make an interim order containing any provision that could be contained in a regulation made under Section 62 or 63 if the minister is of the opinion that immediate action is required to deal with a significant risk, direct or indirect, to public health. So these orders used to be subject to debate through the parliamentary process, but is no longer the case. Thanks to Bill C-97, which received royal assent on June 21st of 2019. And included in this is directly from the third reading of Bill C-97. Subdivision K of Division 9 of Part 4 repeals the provisions of the Quarantine Act that relate to the laying of proposed regulations before Parliament, as well as Division 9 of Part 4 of the Human Pathogens and Toxin Act. So they took it in a budget bill, repealed the sections that required them to bring their regulations to for potential amendments. And this happened in June. It received royal assent June 21st of 2019. Things that just kind of make you go. There's a lot of that kind of stuff happening. And I suggest to you that you start looking into this and questioning things, because I'm just at the point where it's most certainly not about a virus anymore. Not in Canada. We watch other countries with lower vaccination rates opening up. No mass restriction, on and on the list goes. I mean, and here it's a completely different situation. You have to ask, what is this really about? And you look at those influences. The World Economic Forum, all the partners, Deputy Prime Minister sits on the Board of Trustees, and that's just the tip of the iceberg, everyone. Like, that's really not even that in depth on this stuff. Here's another one I wrote, and I'm going to keep bringing these up because these research pieces need to get out. The fact that there's a lot of information that needs to come out. For instance, here's another one. Trudeau gave $200 million to the Asian Development Bank. The trustees of the projects have past ties to the Aga Khan. This was written on the 10th of June, 10 days ago. So Trudeau gave $200 million to the Asian Development Bank to make investments through their Canadian Climate Fund for the private sector in Asia. The funding began in 2016. It's committed until the 2041-42 fiscal year. According to the program, is designed to support greater private sector participation in climate change mitigation and adaptation, and also promote gender equality and the empowerment of women and girls. So here's all the different projects. They did Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Cambodia, Indonesia, Nepal, Uzbekistan, Vietnam, doing different renewable projects. But this is the thing that gets weird. So obviously we know the Aga Khan connection, private vacation. He's a lobbyist. He has something called the Aga Khan Development Foundation. And they have a memorandum of understanding between them and the Asian Development Bank. It's linked in the article. The Asian Development Bank is also listed as a partner on the Aga Khan Development Foundation's website. And then we get into the trustees that are responsible for the funds for these projects and their work history. So one here worked as an economist, the Aga Khan Rule Support Program. This one worked for BRAC Bank Limited. They're partnered with the Aga Khan Development Foundation. Signed an agreement. So again, there's a history there. Moving down, this one lady works at Citibank has something called Citi Foundation that is partnered with the Aga Khan Foundation. This is one that worked at KPMG Accounting, KPMG Corporate Team Accountant. This was found on LinkedIn. Aga Khan Foundation Foundation Canada. So it appears another tie. Another one was Nath Kiran, worked at Tata Capital. They own 3.74% of the shares in the Aga Khan's Fund for Economic Development. And then he's another trustee. And then another Citibank employee responsible. So like it's always arm's length. That's kind of how that stuff, and it doesn't mean there's anything going on there, but you have to ask questions. This has been going on a long time, and we really need to start being vocal, be polite, be compassionate. But it's time people know about this stuff. And if you haven't, it's time they start hearing the other side of things. There's effective treatments, and I've had this conversation before, but there's effective treatments, and we're not using them in Canada. And the way we're handling this is atrocious. That's pretty much it. That being said, lots of good news. There's lots of good ways to treat this. We have the mainstream media, the report, starting the report on this, kind of the narrative shifting. Got lots of good treatments. We got the viral video of the Derek Sloan press conference blowing up because people are hungry for the truth. Happy Father's Day, everyone. Let's hope that Father's Day in 2022 we'll be talking about how this isn't a thing anymore. Thanks, everyone. We'll catch you next time.